Hello, my name is Maria Jolicoeur. Welcome to my show, Let's Talk About History. I'm here today with Norwich historian Dale Plummer. And Dale, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. I know that you have a group that you lead called the Norwich Heritage Trust.
Yes.
And it's a fairly new group. I think it's only been in existence a couple years, 2 or 3 years.
Well, no, actually, Norwich Heritage Trust was founded in 1981, but it went into, I guess, hibernation around 2001. So we have just basically revived it and are looking to carry on the good work that they did in the 1980s and 1990s.
Okay, and their interests are historic preservation.
That's correct.
Yes. And I am a member, I'm happy to say.
And we're very pleased to have you as a member.
Thank you. One of their concerns is the Reed and Hughes building in Norwich. It's been a slow process, and I know that we have attended a few meetings at City Hall regarding the Reed and Hughes building. Now, you are responsible for helping the restoration efforts of the Warregan.
Yes,
and
that's
you're
true.
also, your efforts are to get the Reed and Hughes building, historically preserved. You're interested in the historic facade of the building.
Well, yes, our interest really is not simply preserving the building itself, but seeing it put back into use, seeing the entire building used. For apartments, retail use on the first floor, to make it a viable part of the downtown.
Yes, and I think the public has been reading in the newspaper regarding the Reed and Hughes building, and we're hoping that something is accomplished there. Do you know if there's any continuance in your efforts?
Oh yes, we are very interested in the building. We are committed to seeing it preserved, restored, rehabilitated for the sake of the downtown and of the city as a whole. So we are very, very much interested in seeing the city encourage that. And the city owns the building. This is not like a privately owned building. It's owned the building for 23 years, I believe, this year. And unfortunately, the deterioration in the building has really occurred under the city's ownership. So the city has a responsibility here that they need to step up to.
And the public has concerns also regarding the public safety. There was mention of snow buildup on the roof.
Yes, the portion of the building which is in the worst shape is in the middle of the building. It's away from the areas where the sidewalks and where the public is. There's actually no danger to the public.
So if anyone is interested in getting involved in the Norwich Heritage Trust, is there an email or a website that they can go to?
We're working on the website right now. It's not complete, but they could certainly email me. Personally, we will have our own email soon. But would you like me to give my email, or?
Could you?
Sure.
Yes.
It's Plummerdale, Plummerdale, at gmail.com.
Okay. And you'd be welcome to attend the meetings.
Yes.
And you have also in Norwich, you have walking tours in the spring. Are there any that you have planned coming up?
Probably not until April or May. We're waiting to see what the weather develops like. Unfortunately, last year we had snow well into March. We don't know what this year is going to be like. Hopefully the mild winter will continue. If it looks like that, we might have walking tours as early as April, but more likely May. Our focus would be on the downtown, I think, because that is really one of the most endangered areas in terms of the Reed and Hughes building. We have other issues downtown that need to be addressed. But when you look at where the Reed and Hughes is located, a lot of money was spent on redoing the Warrigan. It's beautiful. The Shannon building is beautiful. We need to have the Reed and Hughes join those. It would reinforce the positive impact those buildings are having on the downtown, rather than an empty lot strewn with bricks.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Historic preservation is important to preserve the history of some of the old buildings in Norwich.
Well, it's very important, and I think that in other towns, historic preservation has been an economic stimulator. The reason is several-fold. It takes buildings which are unused or underused and puts them back into use, adding to the tax base. It brings more people in, which adds to the economic activity. And I think it also, the construction, if you demolish a building, it takes a very short period of time. You don't need many people. It's relatively inexpensive. Restoring a building is longer, but the result is better, but it also provides employment. It provides taxes. The building uses utilities, which actually in Norwich comes back to the city. So there are many benefits to it.
Are there any other buildings in the area that are headed to be demolished that you're in favor of saving?
Well, we don't like to see anything demolished.
Yeah.
Certainly, we have a number of deteriorated buildings in town. I think one of the and in the historic districts, we have a number of historic districts. We have Taffville and Panema Mills.
The Panema Mill. What do you think of that? Do you
Well,
think it would be worth saving, having apartments built there?
Yes, and that looks like it's moving forward.
Oh, wonderful.
So that would be wonderful.
That'd be quite a bit of work, but
that's a huge project.
Yes,
but it depends on some assistance from the state, but also the federal tax credits for historic preservation.
Yeah, and you're also hoping that the Reed and Hughes building would contain low-income housing.
No.
Not low-income housing?
No, the proposals that have been made for it are for affordable housing.
Oh, affordable
That's
housing.
for people, the structure of what we had proposed would be for people earning 40 to 60 plus thousand a year. There are different categories of affordable housing. I think when the Warrigan was done, that was what the market could bear. The Reed and Hughes, there's been an increased activity. There's also more people are interested in moving downtown. So developers feel that they could do a different kind of affordable housing for the next level up, which I think would be great. We're talking about people who work in the library, people who are starting with the fire or police or other public jobs.
That are close by.
Yes.
Their job is close by.
Exactly.
Mohegan Sun, Foxwoods.
That's right.
They wouldn't have far to travel.
Exactly. And it's
the Reed and Hughes building holds a lot of memories for many Norwich citizens.
Oh, yes.
The store that used to be there.
My great-grandfather worked there.
Oh, my goodness.
He came from Scotland to Norwich in 1885 to work at Reed and Hughes.
1885.
Yes, 131 years ago.
Oh, isn't that marvelous?
So
your roots are pretty deep in this area.
Well, yes. He sent back for his Scottish wife and children. They came here, and she died shortly after she arrived in Norwich. So he married an American girl whose roots go back to the founding of Norwich, actually.
Oh,
so I'm actually descended from one of the founding families, as well as from a more recent immigrant.
When was the Reed and Hughes building built?
Well, the original building was built prior to the Civil War. It was called Apollo Hall. That was where meetings were held. It had a music conservatory in it, I believe. There was a store owned by Wareham Williams and others, where Richard Hamar lives. Yes, that was Wareham Williams's house. But it burned in 1869.
I didn't know that.
It burned to the ground, and it was replaced with the current building.
The Reed and Hughes building?
Yes. Well, the original Williams building. So in 1869, Wareham Williams and his associates rebuilt the building, and then in 1879, Reed and Hughes came in, occupied the building, and were there for over a century.
Oh my goodness!
In fact,
it was a lovely department store in the 60s and 50s and 70s, 1970s.
And a
lot of people from Norwich went to the Reed and Hughes department store.
It was the place to go.
Yeah.
But while that really can't be brought back as a department store, the modern department stores are so much larger, the building can be reused for living space, for other retail space or restaurant, or many different possibilities.
Yeah. I know that you do genealogy, family research, and it's like Mr. Gates, who do you think you are?
Oh, not that elaborate.
It's similar, though. But I mean, you do genealogy for people that are interested to know what their family, their ancestors.
Well, I guess you could say as city historian, people often contact me because they're trying to find out more information about their ancestors. So I probably don't do genealogy as such, but more family history. And I'll give you an example. One of the things about Norwich is that it's a place where many people started out. They raised families here, and then their children or their grandchildren picked up and moved westwards. Can't really go too far eastwards here. So they would go to New York, to Ohio, further west. So there are many people in this country who have ancestors from Norwich but are living on the West Coast and everywhere in between. So I get those kind of calls, and often they're trying to find out more information about a particular family member that they trace back to Norwich and what their life was like and so on. So I do my best to help them out.
So they just call your number or they email you?
They tend to email me. They can call my number, but really email is better. In email you can explain much better what you're looking for, I think. And I have a separate email account for my city historian position. And I can actually give that if you like.
Sure.
That is
of course.
city historian at norwichct.org.
Okay.
And that will get to me.
So now if anyone is interested in family research, Dale would be more than happy to help you. Look up your name, just ancestors that you have in the area or that have moved out of state.
Right. I guess
so. You can give them a hand, help them.
Sure.
Basically.
And I think one of the major resources in our area is the history and genealogy room at the Otis Library. So I am there fairly often, and the librarians and the reference desk are quite helpful.
At the library, yeah.
Yes. But they have resources that they have the old census records. They have a subscription to Ancestry.com, so you can use the computer there to do searches for your ancestors.
And they can also get files from different states. They can order borrow from other libraries.
That kind of thing, yes. They also have microfilm of the bulletin and of the day and some of the older papers that stretch back into the 1700s. So that's a useful resource.
And books of Norwich that have names of families.
Yes. Calkin's History of Norwich, Arthur Lathrop's more recent books and others. And they also have many genealogies, published genealogies of specific families. So,
yeah, I had gone up to City Hall, and you would know this, be aware of this, that there's the department that has records dating back to the founding of Norwich. You open the book and you find names like Ladd, Lathrop.
Right.
That these records were kept in the 1600s.
Right.
And it's simply written when there was a birth, a son, a daughter, or who got married. And you could help people with that also.
Well, the vital statistics, the birth and marriage and death records of Norwich are actually published, and those are at the Otis Library up until 1852. After 1852, one has to go to the city clerk's office.
And they do have the books there.
However,
1630, 1642.
Right.
And
but those have all been transcribed, and those are available in a published form. The original handwriting is difficult to read, and often, because paper back then was made by hand and was so expensive,
they used like a pulp, right?
Right, they made it from old clothing. They would, and it was imported from Europe until, or England, until Christopher Leffingwell built his own paper mill in 1766. However, because it was so expensive, they tended to write on every part of the paper, and it's often very difficult to read. So, but we have excellent transcriptions of it. There's also the Hampstead Diary, although it's in New London, contains a lot of information about Norwich, because Joshua Hampstead, who wrote the diary between 1711 and 1758 when he died, he visited Norwich very often. He had relatives here. He purchased gravestones. He would bring gravestones down from here and actually chisel the inscriptions on them, and then they would be used in New London. So there's a lot of contact between Norwich and New London in those days.
And New London was known for whaling.
Yes,
industry?
whaling after 1817, I think the first real continuous string of whaling voyages started. There's some earlier efforts before that, some of them based here in Norwich. But in the colonial period, both New London and Norwich were engaged in trade with the West Indies. They would send ships down.
For sugar and spices.
Sugar, some of the spices or whatever could be grown there. But sugar, molasses, rum, and we must not forget enslaved Africans. Both communities had a large, population compared to the rest of the state of African Americans because of the trading back and forth with the West Indies.
Some of the African Americans in the 1700s also fought in the Revolutionary War.
Oh yes, and bravely.
Yeah.
Very bravely.
They were proud of their country.
Yes. In fact, one of the very first victims in the fight for freedom, the Boston Massacre, where the British troops attacked a group in Boston, a mob, was Crispus Attucks.
Oh.
Crispus Attucks had escaped from slavery, was living in Boston. He apparently was both African American and Native American in his heritage, and he was one of those who was shot and killed by the British. You shouldn't forget that.
Yeah, and also Indians were used for slaves also.
Yes, it's a sad part of our heritage which we need to remember.
They were used as maids or servants.
Exactly. After the Pequot War and other wars with the Native Americans, captured Indians were in fact enslaved. Some of them shipped down to the West Indies, in fact. And traded for slaves of African origin.
It was a hard life for everybody. I mean,
yes.
Fabric
many people
was rare. It was hard to get. They had to import that from over England and the Orient for very luxurious
Yes, and
fabrics.
many people who came to this country were not really free in that they might earn their... So you had people who were brought over as, to be slaves. You had Native Americans who were enslaved in the various wars. You had English and others who came over as indentured servants, where they would pay for their passage by agreeing to work for a term of years. So they were not really free people.
Yeah, and even the sons of families were considered a commodity because they could do the farm work and the work, go hunting with their father, and so they were used as laborers on the family farm.
That's
Everybody had their part to play in the chores and keeping the household going strong.
That's one of the things that I think led in the 19th century Abraham Lincoln to hate slavery so much. Lincoln was, his father basically had Lincoln do work on other farms and so forth, and Lincoln's pay, Abraham's pay, would be paid to his dad. So Lincoln had this experience of working basically for nothing.
Definitely. He was still respecting his father and what he had done for his son Abe, and willing to give his wage to his father, knowing how
well he was legally obligated to, and there's pretty good signs that Abraham Lincoln and his dad Thomas Lincoln did not get along well.
No, the Norwich Marina was a very busy place at that time also.
Oh, Norwich was a thriving seaport. And of course the ships of the colonial era were very small, shallow in draft, and they could make their way upriver. So, and the advantage Norwich had over New London was that the cargoes on these ships were lumber.
Okay,
we just have a few minutes left, or are we?
About a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, they brought lumber and
products from the countryside, put them on board ship. So Norwich was closer to the farms and so forth of eastern Connecticut. So they cut off New London's trade.
I'll have to have you come for another visit here, because we could continue about the history in this area.
It's very rich, very rich.
Yeah. Thank you, Dale, so much.
Thank you, Maria, for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to going on one of your spring tours.
We'll let you know, but we will be doing some, definitely.
Okay, and I hope you enjoyed my show, and thank you very much for joining me tonight. Thank you.